You ready?
Yep.
All right, welcome back to the TCI studio. Mr. Dodd over here, Mr. Robert over here. We need to get back at you guys and get some videos rolling. So we're going to do several here today, and you guys will see more of those headed your way. We're almost to July, Alex, and you know what July means.
It means things are starting to heat up. We're going to have a lot more content and be able to get out on the road and get some good quality stuff for you guys. So I'm getting excited, trying to rest a little bit before July gets here.
There's no rest. He just got back from a week off, and he's talking about resting, man. He's ready to get back at it and hit the studio. We've got Dabo Sweeney media event on the 19th. We'll head up to Charlotte on the 20th and 21st, and ACC kickoff. Everything's supposed to be quote-unquote back to normal. We'll see what that means. Hopefully that is the case, because my expectation is we're back and ready to roll. There's some huge topics out there this summer, so we're going to talk about a couple of those here today. And we're going to start off, Alex, talking about one that's kind of been a hot topic the last couple of weeks. Playoff. Not the playoff I would have expected. I would have thought when they went to a playoff it would be an 8-team playoff, but they've been doing all this work, this group of 4 folks, over the last couple of years apparently, and they have this 12-team model, and they've had a couple of meetings here the last couple of weeks. Last week they had a meeting with the CFP board, which Jim Clements is now on, and they've decided to kind of push the proposal forward and gather some feedback. I guess my first question to you is, what's your general feeling of a 12-team playoff?
Well, generally I felt the same way as you, that they would incrementally expand the playoff. I knew expansion was coming because, I mean, really since the first year of the playoff, when they saw the checks coming in, they saw the viewership and how much excitement was around a playoff atmosphere for college football. I knew expansion would come eventually. I didn't expect to hear the announcement this summer, and I think the committee really did a good job of kind of keeping it under wraps. The fact they've been able to work on this thing for a few years now and nobody knew about it until it came out is kind of shocking. But I was really shocked that they moved straight to 12. It is going to be fun to watch a little bit extra college football, but there are a lot of questions that are still left to be answered about how this thing's going to work out, when it's going to be implemented. And really to really hear the opinions of coaches and athletes across college football be interesting over the next month.
That's what I can't wait to dive into. We've got Clements, who's on the board of CFP. Dabo has been one of the most boisterous critics of going to an expanded playoff. So now all of a sudden you got your president on the board who was in the meeting, and you know, all the things we heard coming from the meeting was that there were no major objections. They wanted to go back and gather more feedback and all of that. So you got Dabo, outspoken critic of it, and you got Clements kind of taking, it looks like maybe a different path. So obviously when we get to talk to Dabo here in a couple of weeks, he's going to get a lot of questions about, you know, what does he feel about it? We actually were hoping we were going to be able to talk to him at camp that day, because that's when this thing first came out. Because my take on this is Dabo and President Clements are probably on different pages on this one.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen from the CFP committee and the board of presidents and chancellors over the last few years is it's really a groupthink organization. Like when somebody objects, nobody knows about it. So for all I know, Clements could be an objector to this, but every statement...
So you're saying like a silent committee, he's a silent objector?
He could be a silent objector. We don't know. But it's interesting to see them come out and basically say, hey, we're all on the same page moving forward, when we know that, you know, Coach Sweeney has been vehemently opposed to expansion from the beginning. He even has gone on record to say he had no problem with the BCS. He had no problem with the bowl series before that in crowning national champions. So he didn't have a problem with those, and now we're going to move all the way to 12. He's always talked about the regular season being a huge issue, taken away from the value of the regular season, and now you're going to have a team that could lose 3, possibly even 4 games that could make the college football playoff.
Win that conference championship.
All you got to do is win the conference championship, and you make the thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out when we get to hear from, you know, Saban and Sweeney and these other coaches who have been outspoken critics of expansion from the beginning.
Well, just to review the process, you know, and I'll talk about this a little bit. 12 teams. top four conference champions get a bye, don't have to play. The other 8 teams will play initially. Those first round games will be at a school location. So then you'll get down to the 8-team playoff, which is kind of what everybody expected. So that means you're going to have three playoff games for those teams. So you're going to have the January 1st bowls will be your quarterfinals, and then you're going to have your semifinals and your championship game in January. So one thing is, I'm not sure the NFL is going to like this, because college football is going to be infringing on a time when they just kind of owned everything after the playoff was done, because now we're probably going to have, January 1st and let's say January 10th, January 20th. Football's going to be going a lot longer into January. From a website owner perspective, I love it because we're expecting Clemson to be there pretty much every year, and hopefully a lot of years going to those semifinals and finals. So it'd be great for us. We'll have college football coverage, closer to the end of January. But from a player perspective, it goes against a lot of the things, and this is what Dabo and Saban and those guys talk about. You're talking about more games, you're talking about more chances for injuries, you're talking about more time away from school. All of those things, now nobody cares because everybody wants an opportunity and everybody wants that dollar you talked about earlier.
Right. I don't know that it's necessarily going to give us better football games per se. It's definitely going to be exciting to watch, to see what those atmospheres on campus are going to be like, which creates a whole other set of problems with the top 4 seeds not getting to take advantage of bringing people to their town to host a college football game. So that brings up another set of issues. But like you said, a 5 seed could go and play 4 games if they were to make it to the national championship. With a conference championship game and a 12-game regular season, you're talking about an NFL season.
And they're not talking about shortening the season,
right,
which is something people thought they might look at.
And the NFL just now moved to a 17-game regular season, and now you're going to have a 17-game college season potentially for a few teams. And can an 18 to 22-year-old sustain the rigor of a college football season for 17 games?
Well, and right now your schedule, and Clemson's one of the schools in Alabama, the ones that know this better than anybody, even when the championship game being on the 11th or 12th of January, there wasn't a lot of time then between once the national championship game was over and when the guys hit mat drills in early February.
Right.
So now you're going to talk about, okay, you're going to finish your season maybe on the 20th of January. You're going to have 2 weeks.
Right.
And then, hey, let's go back 5 a.m. mat drills and get going for the next season. That's going to be a big, big, big grind on the players.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with the thing is college football has already turned into, for the elite teams, a year-round sport. I mean, this is really the only time of year is the month of June where these guys are getting time off, but they're still having mat drills and workouts and voluntary things on campus. So can these guys sustain it? Is it even feasible for the student athlete? And I don't think the College Football Playoff Committee is even thinking about the student athlete. All they see is green.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Well, and the other thing is I think it's going to, as you said, you're not going to have, the Clemsons and Bamas are still going to destroy these other teams in the quarterfinals. But what it's going to put a bigger emphasis on, and what's going to be even more important, is the teams that have the depth. Right? Because now you've got those extra games, you've got extra chances for injuries, having those, we saw some of that last year with COVID, and, Clemson had more injuries last year than they have the previous few. That's going to be even that much more important.
Yeah, I mean, we saw even last year just the difference it makes not having, the same amount of games as another team from a health standpoint. How playing, fewer games, it gives you an extra, oomph. You don't have that dog days mentality as you get into December and January. I mean, a 12-game season takes a toll on a team, and we really saw that discrepancy with teams playing different amounts of games last year. So whether or not the committee was paying attention to that, whether they care, is, I guess, for you to decide. But it is going to be interesting. I think it's good that I guess the little guys are going to get a seat at the table with this. That's one positive that you can take away from this, that you can go to a Coastal Carolina or an App State and you can still compete for a national championship and make it to a playoff. Whether or not those teams can actually get there.
How are they going to feel when they play that first round game against Ohio State or Clemson?
When you walk into Columbus,
get beat 55-3, and it's like, okay, well.
When you walk into Columbus or you walk into Notre Dame Stadium as Coastal Carolina or App State, like how much of a chance do you actually have to win that game? I mean, how many major upsets have we seen in the last 20 years.
Yep.
You can count them on your hand. So is that even going to be a possibility when we get into this? And that's what they're kind of selling, is having a seat at the table. Bob Bowlesby's probably been the loudest voice about that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Big 12 has missed out before, particularly that first year with
Pac-12 is
TCU and
loving it.
Baylor.
Now they can finally get in.
Yeah, the Pac-12 has had some rough years, but now, last year, Oregon team that was, above average but not elite would be in the college football playoff.
Well, and a lot now they're going to start getting feedback. So we'll see if that changes anything. The other thing that's starting to come out a little bit more, when it first came out, everybody's like, oh, this thing will probably start maybe in 2023. Now, after the meetings they had last week, it's like, this thing might not start until 2026 when the current contract ends. So my guess is it'll be somewhere in the middle of those two. They've got all the lawyers to work through all the bowl agreements and all of that. But it's coming. It's not quite here. But, I still think you're going to see the same Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, or whoever will be in those semifinals.
Right, and one of the thought processes that the committee has voiced is that it would create less parity in the sport, but I think it's actually probably going to have an unintended consequence of the opposite happening. Is these elite teams that pretty much make it every year, Clemson obviously making it every year, these elite teams that make it almost every year are now definitely going to make it every year.
Yep.
So are you going to be able to slow the roll of those powers? I don't think so. For Clemson, this could be honestly a great thing from a program standpoint of you're a lock to be in the college football playoff every year, even if you slip up.
For the team, yes. For the school, yes. For the fans, no.
Right.
And the big thing for the fans now, and Clemson fans and Alabama fans know this because they've been going to national championship games every year. Pretty much no other school out there really knows this. The cost of the travel.
Yes.
And Clemson has the ACC championship game. I think one of the side effects to this will be you'll see a lot less people making that trip to Charlotte for the ACC championship game every year now, because now you're going to have a bowl game, a semifinal, and a final, 3 different places to travel. It's just going to be that much harder on the fans. The schools that haven't gone through this, they'll love it the first year. But for the Clemson and Alabamas, you're going through this every year. Now, all of a sudden, if you're a fan, you've got potential of 4 games,
right,
including your ACC championship, and then 3 playoff games.
Right.
How do you budget? Which games do you choose? We've seen before where Clemson fans wouldn't go to the semifinal because they were planning on Clemson being in the Natty, and they would just save their money and go there. So now the fans have a more difficult decision.
Right, and even as the Clemson insider, Robert's probably going to have to leave me at home for the 12-team playoff.
Well, I've already looked at my budget, and I'm like, holy smokes! January budget goes through the roof. But obviously that will be offset by, hey, we're going to have football on January 20th,
right,
and then the parade on January 24th, and just kind of, as you talked about earlier, Alex, that football season keeps eating up more and more days of the year, and as we know for TCI, that's having football all the time is wonderful.
So it'll be fun to watch, it'll be fun to observe, but when you get in the nuts and bolts of it, it doesn't look as grand as it does on paper. So we'll see what the committee does over the next several weeks as they iron out the details of this and see, can it work? Is it going to work? When you look at the details and really hammer everything out, is it possible to go straight to 12? I mean, it's possible that they could say, maybe 12 is too ambitious and work their way up. But I don't know. They seem pretty set on it right now. So
they sure do. All right, guys, that's everything we could think of to talk about on that topic. We'll have a lot more on that as we work through the summer and get some answers, as we get Dabo's feedback, as we hear more from President Clements. A lot more to come on TCI on that topic and many others. Stay tuned to TCI for the most complete coverage of Clemson football, Clemson recruiting, and Clemson athletics.